Hi everyone, my name is Max Jakubowski and this is my senior project presentation. So my essential question for my project is, how can I create a podcast explaining how COVID-19 has affected families, schools, and businesses? So the overview of my presentation will be explaining what my project is, my research, doing the actual project, and my overall reflection. So why I chose this project. My original idea was to host a volleyball clinic for the elementary school because it combined both of my interests, which is working with elementary school kids and playing volleyball, because I'm going to go into elementary education while I'm in college. But since COVID-19 kind of shut that idea down, I thought maybe I should do a podcast about COVID-19, but informing the community on how it's affected other people's lives. So for my mentor, it was pretty easy to choose. I knew I would choose Miss Mannion because she has the experience working with podcasting. She has her own podcast, and she has her own equipment that she said that she would let me use, so I thought that was really generous of her. And then for my timeline that I created here, in January, I wanted to contact people to interview, and then towards the end of the month, I wanted to end up meeting with my mentor to get all the podcast equipment set up so that when we go into February, I'll be ready to conduct all the interviews. And then towards the end of February, I would edit all the recordings, and then by March, I would publish all the episodes onto Buzzsprout. Now, Buzzsprout is the podcasting website that I use to publish my episodes because it's so convenient to use, and it's also free to use for a certain amount of days. And then it's also easy to share your podcast around because it creates a link for you so you can spread the word about your podcast. So for my research process, I broke it up into categories. So with my papers, I wanted to, in the beginning, research how to make and manage podcasts because that was my first podcast that I'm doing, so I wanted to know what I was getting into. And then also with COVID-19, I had to research the virus itself to get a little bit of a background of how it actually performs and stuff. And then I also researched how families were affected, schools and businesses were affected by COVID-19 as a whole. And then doing the project itself, I wanted to keep the interviews at 15 minutes maximum because I didn't want people to lose interest in listening. And then I also wanted to talk less and listen to my interviewers' stories more so that people listening would hear how their lives have been affected. And then we also followed COVID protocols, so we spread our desks out 6 feet or more so that we could still face each other, and we also still wore masks so we could have a one-on-one conversation. And then I also prepared some questions so I wasn't improvising and pausing for a long period of time in the episodes. So in this project, I definitely had some successes, which would be the right mentor, because like I said previously, that Miss Mannion, she had her own equipment that I could borrow. She had experience working with podcasting. And then the interviews were also a major success because I was able to interview everyone within a week. So I interviewed one person every day. And then the editing was also a success because once I got all my recordings into GarageBand, I managed to conveniently cut and paste some little snippets of the recording so it would flow easily. And then completing my project by March was also a success because I didn't think I would complete it so soon. I thought I'd still be working on it. But with successes, I also did have some obstacles like spreading the word. They do give me a link on Buzzsprout, but I only shared that link a couple of times on my social media. So in hindsight, I think what I should have done is make posters with QR codes of the link and posted them around the school, around the community for people to listen to. So that's something I would do differently. And then GarageBand in the beginning was an obstacle because converting the recordings from my desktop onto the app itself was kind of a challenge. So I did have to get help, but I managed to finally solve that issue. And then scheduling the interviews was also an obstacle because people have different schedules. So I had to make sure I could fit everyone within a week. And that then later turned into a success because we did complete everything within the week. And then also the questions were an obstacle because I prepared 4 to 5 questions. However, those questions went by so quickly, so I had to come up with some on the spot. So I had a lot of editing out to do with those long pauses. And then overall, I'd say this project has definitely been a learning experience because editing in GarageBand was very new to me, yet it was so easy and convenient to use. So I was actually enjoying the editing process of my podcast. And then also just learning about people's point of views was also really interesting because I knew how my life has been affected by COVID, but I didn't know how teachers' lives were being affected throughout the community, as well as families and like my boss, who I interviewed as well for business. And then also making a podcast was a learning experience too because I've never made one before, and this has actually been my first podcast, so it was really interesting to, do it. And then in the images, the top image is just my editing that I've been doing, and then the bottom image is the actual podcast equipment, and it was actually really convenient to use because it was just a minimalistic series of buttons that I could easily navigate. And then what my final product looks like, if you see on the left, that's the cover art that I have. The title is COVID Conversations, and I have a silhouette of a head with a virus because that's what we're mainly talking about. And then on the right, it's the episodes in order. I have part 1 and part 2 for schools because one part is from a student's point of view and one is from a teacher's point of view. And then before I conclude this presentation, I would just like to thank Ms. Mannion for helping me navigate through my project, and also all the people up there who I interviewed, because without them I would not even have a project.